Okay, welcome to part 3 of getting firewood in the winter time. It's very cold. It's like -6 right now, so I have this thing on to cover my face. But this is the part where we buck the tree into rounds with the chainsaw, and we get the snow machine and we haul them to the woodshed. Here we go. So as you see, Jason is cutting the limbs very carefully and bucking the tree into rounds. It's very cold outside, so you have to watch your pace when you're working out here, because your body is fighting the cold, it's fighting the elements. And it's going to get a lot colder today. So what he does is he cuts the limbs. And lots of times I'll take the limbs and I'll put them in piles, but I'm not going to bother with that today because it's just too much work. We just want to get the rounds cut and get them to the woodshed. Now, we'll stand back so y'all can hear me, but one thing that you need to remember is that the chainsaw chain can get broken or thrown by objects like rocks and stuff like that, so he has to be careful which limbs he cuts, because they're kind of like a kickstand that keep the thing upright like this. And if he cuts the wrong one, it'll go and then it'll land on the ground, and it'll be harder to buck because it might hit a rock that we don't see under the snow. So he's got to be careful. Very selective, let's just say. And the snow's pretty deep. But another thing you can do when the snow's deep like this and you cut the tree branches is you can stand on these branches almost like they're a snowshoe. And that can keep you up out of the deep snow. So you can see it's snowing right now, just a little bit. So it warmed up to -6. It was -12 this morning. And it went up a whole 6 degrees, so as you can see, it's got that big lump on it. That lump right there is called a burl. It's like an overgrowth on the bark. And they're very valuable, and they sell for a pretty good price here, but we kind of get sentimental about them, and we don't want to sell them. So, another thing you can see, whoa, slipping snow up to my waist here. You can see the patterns of blue on the inside of the trunk here. That's the fungus that also builds up in here. The blue ring tree fungus. And it's a pretty good indicator that the tree is dead. And this is a pretty big guy. See, I'll put my foot next to it. I wear a size 9 shoe. You can see how big that is. And this is when the snow machine, or not the snow machine, the chainsaw likes to crap out.
No, it's just cold, so it wants to, it doesn't want to keep going.
It wants to bind up.
And so what we'll do, rather than get into fucking waist-deep snow here,
yeah,
trying to limbing a tree is the most dangerous part of felling trees. People think it's when you knock them down. It's not. It's cutting the branches because you're on uneven ground.
Yep.
You're cutting at weird angles. You got the saw in your hand. A lot can go wrong.
You're risking kickback.
So rather than risk all that, trying to wade into this deep, deep snow here to try and limb this with this huge weight sitting here. That's the other thing. The weight of the tree is now suspended on its under branches.
Yeah, I was just explaining that.
And so what I've done here is I've cut almost all of them. There's one more there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start cutting sections back till I get to about here, and then I'll continue limbing.
To reduce the weight so that it doesn't...
This also gives me something to stand on.
That's what I was just saying. It's almost like snowshoes in a way.
The snow underneath me is about 5 feet deep.
Yes, it's very deep.
So if I sink in, that puts the tree almost over my head.
Yes.
And you don't want to be working overhead with a chainsaw. So
heck no.
I'm going to use the branches that I've cut and the tree to stabilize myself, to walk through this shit.
Yes, it is very deep.
Stuff, I should say.
It's very deep.
And come back out to our trunk here. One of the bonuses of cutting trees in the winter is that it does suspend itself sometimes like this.
Yeah.
And that makes it a lot easier. Your saw's not going to catch the dirt and mess up the chain.
Yeah.
And the only thing you got to worry about is one of these rounds weighs almost 60 pounds. So you don't want to drop that on you.
Well, and also the drier they are, the lighter they are, the lighter they get, but they are still enough to break your foot if you
They're
drop
still
them.
very heavy, and
Yep.
you don't want them to fall on you, and you certainly don't want to fall on you while you're wielding a saw.
Yeah, heck
so
no.
You want to, you know, notice I kicked this guy out of the way. He's gonna be harder to get when I go to collect them, but
Yes.
that gives this guy somewhere to fall.
Yes.
I'm also gonna make sure that these cuts are not longer than what my stove can accommodate.
Yep.
And they're also not so long that they're very difficult to split, because they're very big.
Yes.
And the bigger the round is, the harder it is to split. So the shorter it is, the easier it is to split.
See, we don't have
this big one here is my new chopping block. My old chopping block.
That's the chopping, the new chopping block. It's split in half.
That's why I cut him so big. So anyway, here we go. I'm gonna put the chain brake on.
Yep.
And
well, we don't have a hydraulic log splitter at this time. We split it with the maul by hand, so that's why we are very conscientious about this. But now he's going to buck these into rounds.
Yep, and we'll see how fast we can do it.
Well, we also take our time. We can go pretty fast, but we also are very careful and watch ourselves.
It should also be noted, if you're not familiar with a chainsaw, do not drop start it like I'm about to do. Set it in the ground.
Yes.
The way I started the first time, because this can go horribly wrong. I'm very confident with this. It's the only reason I do this.
Yep. Okay.
So here's an example. Here's an example of one where I didn't catch all the branches. And you'll notice that over here, we've got a big stout branch right here.
Yep.
And what it's doing is it's forcing this way, and it's wanting to bind my cut. So before I can finish this cut, I have to come back and I have to cut this guy.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it'll pinch the saw, and it'll pinch the chain, and it'll stall the saw out and get your saw stuck.
Yeah,
So,
and that's a bad day. So he's going to do that real quick.
So I'm going to do that real quick.
It goes. So this is what that burl looks like up close. See, it's just a giant mass that it makes on itself. And if you cut them open, they're really interesting shapes on the inside. There's the next one. This one had two good ones on it. And like I said, we won't be burning them for firewood. We're going to keep them. That one almost bit the saw. That's another thing. He was saying it was heavy. It sometimes like to bite the saw. So we've almost got the tree completely bucked. And it's cold. So I'll be back for, I guess it's part 4 of using the snowmobile and getting the rounds out of here. So that'll be part 4. So see you in a minute.